You can keep the house, Ethan, but you'll never understand what you just stole. Before we dive into this story, I need to know something. Have you ever lost everything only to realize later that maybe, just maybe, it was the only way to find yourself again? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. And if you've ever felt like love was worth fighting for, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this ends. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. It's a Tuesday in late October, the kind of gray Ohio morning where the sky hangs low and everything smells faintly of rain and coffee. Claire Monroe sits in her old Corolla outside a CVS parking lot, holding a manila envelope that says Final Decree. Her reflection in the windshield looks foreign. Tired, soft-eyed, 35, with hands that still bear the faint tan lines of a ring she hasn't worn in 6 months. She opens the envelope. Legal jargon spills out like static. Equitable distribution. Non-contested. Awarded to petitioner. She doesn't need to read it all. She knows what it says. Ethan got the house, the savings, and somehow the dog. Her phone buzzes. A text from her sister. You okay? She stares at the screen. Types. Yeah. Just finished signing. Deletes it. Not really. Deletes that too. Instead, she sends nothing. Just locks the phone, breathes. Inside CVS, she picks up a prescription for her anxiety meds. The pharmacist smiles kindly, scanning the bottle. New start, right? She says. Claire smiles back because that's what people expect. A smile, even when everything hurts. On the way home, she passes their house. White shutters, wraparound porch, and Ethan's black F-150 in the driveway. The porch lights are already on, warm and golden against the gray afternoon. It looks like a Christmas card, like it should belong to two people still in love. But inside, it's someone else's life now. She grips the steering wheel harder. Keep driving, she mutters. But she doesn't. She pulls over 2 blocks away, staring at that porch light until her chest tightens. He's in his new office downtown, the smell of sawdust and coffee blending in the air. His crew's finishing a remodel for a new client. On the wall behind him hangs a box of papers. Divorce paperwork, folded receipts, a photo of him and Claire from their honeymoon in Gatlinburg. He hasn't thrown it away. Not yet. When the client leaves, Ethan sits alone, scrolling through messages from his lawyer. Funds transferred. Assets cleared. You're good. Good. He should feel relief, victory even. Instead, there's a heaviness, not sadness exactly, but something dull, like silence too thick to breathe in. He opens the file again, glancing through the itemized list of what he now owns. Then he pauses, a line catches his eye. One framed oil painting, unsigned, depicting a young woman in a field. He barely remembers it. Claire's mom painted it years ago. It had hung in the hallway near their bedroom. Something Claire always said she'd finish someday. He shrugs, closes the file, and moves on. That night, Claire sits on the floor of her tiny apartment, a mismatched space above a nail salon. The air smells like acetone and loneliness. She unpacks boxes labeled kitchen and Claire's stuff. Among the mugs and folded dish towels, she finds a Polaroid. Her mom holding that same unfinished painting, smiling. Claire whispers, "You told me never to let it go." Her throat tightens. Guess I failed that too. Outside, sirens hum faintly in the distance. The city moves on. She doesn't know it yet, but that painting will bring Ethan back into her life in a way neither of them could have imagined. By the end of the week, Claire starts her new job teaching art at Ridgeview Middle School. It's not glamorous. Broken easels, kids more interested in their phones than charcoal sketches. But it's steady. She finds comfort in routine. Coffee from the gas station, a thermos that leaks, a playlist of soft indie songs that somehow sound like rebuilding feels. One afternoon, while cleaning up after class, a student named Lily lingers behind. "Miss Monroe, is it true you used to paint a lot?" Claire smiles faintly. "Used to. Maybe I'll start again." Lily grins. "You should. My grandma says people who paint are brave." That night, Claire takes out her old brushes, lined with dust. She sets up a canvas near the window. She dips the brush in blue, the first stroke in months. But as she paints, she keeps glancing at her phone, at Ethan's social media, at photos of him standing in their old kitchen, beer in hand, the dog asleep beside him. She hates that she still looks. She hates that part of her still wonders if he misses her, or just the version of her who stayed quiet. She'll find out soon enough, because Ethan's about to learn what he really took, and it's not what he thinks. It only takes one discovery to unravel everything you thought you won. The wind carried the smell of rain across Main Street, and the diner's neon sign flickered like it was tired too. Claire parked beside a row of pickup trucks, the same one she'd passed for years, and sat there for a long moment before going inside. It was a Saturday afternoon in November. Football on the TVs, locals talking over burgers, the hum of a normal life she was still trying to learn again. She came for a school fundraiser meeting. Her art students were raising money for supplies, and the principal had promised that the diner owner might donate a portion of sales. Claire clutched her folder like armor. When she stepped in, the door chimed. The smell of coffee and fry grease wrapped around her. She smiled at a waitress she half recognized from high school. Then she froze. Across the room at a corner booth sat Ethan. He wasn't supposed to be there. He was leaning over blueprints spread across the table, talking with another contractor. His hair was shorter now, streaked with gray at the sides. He looked older but steadier too. He didn't see her. Not yet. Claire tried to turn back toward the door, but the waitress called out, "Hey, Claire! Long time. Sit anywhere." Ethan's head lifted. His eyes met hers. For a second, everything stopped. The waitress handed Claire a menu. "Coffee?" Claire nodded. Words stuck somewhere between her throat and memory. She could feel Ethan's gaze, heavy with everything unsaid. When the waitress left, Ethan stood. "Claire." She almost smiled. "Almost. Didn't expect to see you here." "Same." His voice was lower than she remembered. "Guess this town's smaller than I thought." They stood in that half-awkward space where old love feels like a stranger wearing a familiar face. "I'm just here for school stuff," she said quickly. He nodded, then hesitated. "How's everything?" She shrugged. "Fine." It wasn't, and they both knew it. He gestured toward the table. "You want to sit? Just for a minute." Her heart said no. Her curiosity said maybe. She sat. They talked about safe things, students, work, the weather. Every word felt like walking on glass. Then Ethan pulled something from his backpack. A photo on his phone. It was the painting, her mother's unfinished piece, hanging above the fireplace in what used to be their living room. "I didn't realize it meant that much to you," he said. "It was just listed in the assets, and it wasn't about money," she cut in, voice shaking. "That was the last thing my mom ever painted." Ethan looked down. "I didn't know that. You didn't ask." Silence stretched between them. The sound of clinking dishes and laughter from another booth filled the space where their life used to live. Claire swallowed hard. "You can keep the house. I don't care. But that painting, it doesn't belong there." "I'll bring it by," he said quietly. She shook her head. "No, not now." Her chest ached with memories she didn't invite. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. The house was too quiet, the kind of quiet that reminds you what's missing. He walked down the hallway, stopped in front of the painting. Under the dim light, he noticed something. Tiny brushstrokes along the bottom corner, barely visible. He leaned closer. Hidden beneath layers of paint was a faint outline of two hands reaching for each other. He remembered the day Claire's mother died. The storm, the hospital waiting room, the promise he made to look after Claire. He'd failed that. He sat down, head in his hands. For the first time in months, he didn't feel angry. He just felt sorry. Sometimes we don't realize how much we've broken until we see what we were supposed to protect. If this moment hit you, take a second, subscribe, not for me, but for every story you wish you'd handled better. The next morning, Claire found an envelope slid under her apartment door. Inside was a photo, her mother's painting, and a handwritten note. "Didn't know what I was taking. I see it now. E." She held the photo for a long time. Part of her wanted to cry. Another part wanted to tear it up. Instead, she set it on her dresser beside her mother's old paintbrushes. At school, the kids buzzed about the upcoming art fair. Claire threw herself into helping them, sketching decorations, cutting colored paper. For a few hours, she forgot to feel broken. When she left that evening, the sun was low, turning the sky gold. She walked past the football field, parents cheering, teenagers laughing. Life went on, loud and ordinary. Then she saw him again. Ethan stood by the chain-link fence, holding something wrapped in brown paper. He looked unsure, almost nervous. "I didn't mean to show up like this," he said. "Just thought you should have this." He handed her the package. Inside was the painting, carefully wrapped, corners protected. Claire's breath caught. "I cleaned the frame," he said, "and I noticed something underneath. Thought maybe it was unfinished for a reason." Her fingers brushed the canvas edge. She looked up at him. This man who'd once been her whole world, now just a chapter that still hurt to read. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded, backing away. "Take care of yourself, Claire." "I'm trying." They stood there, two people finally speaking truth without shouting. As he turned to leave, thunder rolled in the distance. Rain began to fall slow, cold drops that blurred the parking lot lights. Claire held the painting close, shielding it beneath her jacket. She looked after him, then at the sky. "Maybe this is how it starts," she murmured. "Not the end. Just something honest." The rain came harder. She laughed through tears. She doesn't see it yet, but that painting still holds one last secret, something her mother left for her to find. He thought returning the painting would bring peace. Instead, it was only the first step toward the truth that could break them both again. It had been 3 weeks since Ethan returned the painting. The air had turned colder, the trees outside Claire's apartment nearly bare. On Sunday mornings, the church bells from Main Street echoed faintly through her window. She'd started to find comfort in their rhythm. Something steady in a life that still felt like pieces scattered on the floor. The painting hung above her small kitchen table now. It looked softer here, like it belonged. Each morning, she'd glance at it while sipping her coffee, tracing the faint outline of those two reaching hands her mother had painted. There was something about them she couldn't explain. At school, Claire stayed busy. The winter art fair was only days away, and the gym smelled like glue and paint markers. Parents volunteered. Kids ran around holding glitter posters. Lily, her student, tugged her sleeve. "Miss Monroe, can we use your painting as part of the display? It's, I don't know, kind of beautiful." Claire smiled gently. "It's special to me, but maybe next time." She didn't tell Lily that sometimes, when the light hit the canvas just right, she could see something new. Letters hidden under the brushstrokes, faint, like they were waiting to be seen. That night, after grading papers, Claire stood on her small balcony overlooking the quiet street. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Still owe you an apology. Dinner." She didn't need to ask who it was. For a long moment, she stared at the screen. Then she locked the phone and went back inside. She wasn't ready. Across town, Ethan sat in the house that no longer felt like home. The fireplace flickered weakly. He'd packed some of Claire's old books into boxes, planning to drop them off next week. His sister called. "You doing okay?" "Yeah," he said, staring at the empty spot above the mantel where the painting used to hang. "Have you talked to her?" "A little. And," he exhaled, "I don't know what I thought I'd feel. I gave it back, but I still feel like something's missing." His sister paused. "Maybe it's not the painting." He didn't answer. The next morning, Claire brought the painting to her classroom. She couldn't shake the feeling that her mom wanted her to finish it. Between classes, she studied it under the light, brushing off years of dust. And that's when she saw it. Tiny pencil marks beneath the oil paint, forming the shape of an old farmhouse. She remembered it instantly. Her mother's childhood home, the one that burned down years ago. Why would she hide that in the painting? Claire touched the corner gently. Something about it felt incomplete, like there was still a message beneath the surface. That night, Ethan showed up at the school parking lot with a box of art supplies he'd found in their old basement. "These are yours," he said when she stepped outside. "You could have just left them at the front office. I wanted to make sure they got to you." She hesitated, then took the box. "Thanks." They stood in the cold, their breath visible in the air. Behind them, the gym lights glowed warm and bright for the art fair setup. Ethan looked at her. "You ever think maybe we weren't supposed to end the way we did?" Claire looked down. "I think we ended exactly how we were supposed to." He nodded slowly. "Guess I deserve that." "You deserve peace," she said softly. "So do I." He wanted to say more, but she was already walking away. That night, Claire opened the box. Inside were old brushes, a sketchbook, and a sealed envelope addressed in her mother's handwriting. Her heart stopped. The envelope was worn, yellowed at the edges. On the front, her name, Claire. She stared at it, hands trembling. When she finally opened it, she found a single note. "What you finish, you free." That was all. No signature, no explanation. She looked up at the painting again. The two reaching hands. The faint farmhouse outline. It all connected somehow. Her phone buzzed again. "Ethan, I found something else. Can I come by?" She didn't answer. Whatever he found, it was about the painting too. And when he brings it to her, the truth waiting under the canvas will change everything they thought they knew. The next morning, snow fell for the first time that season. Claire stood at her window, watching it drift past the street lamps. Her small apartment felt even smaller. She thought about that note. Her mom's words echoed in her mind. "What you finish, you free." Maybe it wasn't about the painting. Maybe it was about her life. She sat down, pulled out a brush, and started to paint again. Slowly, carefully, letting herself feel each color. In another part of town, Ethan loaded something into his truck. An old wooden box from the attic, covered in dust. Inside was a folded letter with her mother's signature. He didn't understand it yet, but he knew one thing. He had to show her. He started the engine, the wipers pushing away the snow. By the time he reached her street, the snow had turned to rain. And what he carried wasn't just a message. It was the piece of her mother's secret that had waited years to be found. The rain hadn't stopped all day. Puddles pooled along Maple Street, and the wipers on Claire's car struggled to keep up. She was heading to the county museum. The art fair had been moved there because the school gym roof leaked. Her students' work was already set up, and she was supposed to check final details before the doors opened. She parked by the loading dock and hurried through the drizzle, clutching a tote full of supplies. Inside, the big space smelled of wet concrete and fresh paint. She heard footsteps behind her and turned. Ethan stood there, holding that same old wooden box. His jacket was soaked, hair damp. "You shouldn't be here," she said softly. "I know," he replied. "But you need to see this." He opened the box. Inside lay a smaller canvas, half-finished, the same style as her mother's. A note was taped to the back. "For Claire, paint with me one last time." Claire's breath caught. "Where did you find this?" "In the attic, behind a wall panel. I think your mom hid it before she got sick." She ran her fingers over the canvas edge. The paint was faded, the same shades of blue and gold as the other piece. "She wanted me to finish it," she whispered. Ethan nodded. "I think she wanted us to." They carried the small canvas to a corner table. Outside, thunder rolled across the valley. The lights flickered once, then steadied. The fair organizers had delayed the opening, leaving the two of them alone with rows of quiet art. Claire unwrapped her brushes. Ethan found a stool. The silence between them felt different now, less heavy, more fragile. "She always believed people could start over," Claire said, "even when everything looked ruined." Ethan gave a small laugh. "She told me that once. Said broken things make the best art." Claire met his eyes. She was right. For a while they painted together, each stroke a cautious step toward peace. The sound of rain against the museum roof filled the pauses they didn't need to explain. When the power blinked out for real, emergency lights glowed faintly red. Claire sighed. "Guess the storm's not letting up." Ethan checked his phone, no signal. Roads are flooding. Looks like we're stuck here a while. Forced proximity. Exactly what neither of them thought they wanted. They sat across from each other, the unfinished painting between them. Claire broke the silence first. Do you ever wonder what we could have done differently? Ethan leaned back. All the time. But wondering doesn't fix what's done. No, she said quietly. But maybe it helps you forgive it. He looked at her. Have you? Not yet, she admitted. But I'm trying. He nodded slowly. That's more than I deserve. The emergency lights hummed softly. Rain hammered the roof harder. Claire glanced at him. You didn't have to bring this painting. You could have just mailed it. I didn't trust the mail, he said with a small smile. And I needed to see you. She looked down at the canvas, brushing color into the sky her mother had left unfinished. Then see me, she whispered. Not the woman you think I am, not the one who stayed quiet. Just me. I do, he said, and for once she believed him. Hours passed. They talked about small things, her students, his work, their families. The kind of talk that stitches people together without trying. Somewhere between stories, she noticed the way his voice softened when he said her name. The storm finally began to fade. Through the skylight, a thin streak of moonlight fell across the table, landing on the painting. The image was almost done now. Two hands, reaching, almost touching. Ethan stood, stretching. I'll finish that corner, he said, dipping the brush. As he did, he paused. Claire, there's something else in your mom's note. I didn't tell you before. Her chest tightened. What is it? He hesitated. She wrote, when you finish this, you'll understand what love really meant. Claire's throat felt dry. Maybe she meant forgiveness. Maybe, he said softly. Or maybe she meant letting go. Neither spoke for a long time. When the storm cleared enough for them to leave, Ethan helped her pack the painting carefully. I'll drive behind you, he said. Roads might still be bad. She nodded. All right. Outside, puddles reflected the museum lights. The air smelled of wet asphalt and pine. Before she got into her car, Ethan stopped her. Claire, I don't expect anything, but I need you to know. I didn't mean to take everything from you. I just didn't know what I was losing. She looked at him, tears close but steady. You lost us, she said gently. But you didn't lose my hope for you. He swallowed hard. That's more grace than I deserve. She smiled faintly. Maybe, but that's what love was supposed to be, right? He nodded. Yeah. Have you ever been stuck with someone who made you feel too much? Tell me what happened. Claire drove home in silence, headlights cutting through the wet roads. The painting rested on the passenger seat-belted like something alive. Each color seemed to glow under the streetlights. When she reached her apartment, she carried it upstairs carefully. As she hung it beside the first painting, she noticed something new. When the two canvases sat side by side, the reaching hands connected. Her mother had painted them as one scene all along. Claire covered her mouth, breath shaking. The two pieces made sense only together. And maybe that was the message. Some things break so they can fit differently later. She sat down on the floor, staring at the joined image. A calm she hadn't felt in years filled the room. But hidden beneath one of the frames was still another secret. Something Ethan hadn't seen when he brought it back. And when Claire discovers it, it will open a door neither of them knew her mother had left waiting. Outside, the rain started again, gentle this time. And as the drops tapped the window, Claire realized the past wasn't done speaking. It had only just begun to whisper. Morning light spilled through the apartment window, soft and gold against the two joined paintings. Claire sat at the table with a mug of coffee gone cold. She couldn't stop staring at them. Those two reaching hands that finally touched when side by side. Something about it still felt unfinished. She ran a finger along the frame's edge and felt a small bump near the corner. Curious, she turned it over. The backing was loose, the kind that had been pried open and nailed shut again. She fetched a butter knife from the kitchen drawer and carefully lifted the wood. A folded piece of paper slid out, yellowed with time. Her heart pounded. It was her mother's handwriting again. If you're reading this, it means you found the other half. Claire, love doesn't die, it changes shape. Don't let the past keep you small. And if Ethan's there, tell him I never blamed him. What he took out of fear, not cruelty. Claire's breath hitched. She sat there frozen, the words echoing through the room. Her mom had known. Somehow, she'd known their story would break before it healed. She read the letter again, whispering the last line out loud. Fear, not cruelty. The words cracked something open inside her. She drove straight to Ethan's house. The morning sky hung gray and heavy, and the roads were still wet from last night's rain. When she pulled into the familiar driveway, she sat there for a moment before knocking. Ethan opened the door, surprise flickering across his face. Claire. She held up the letter. We need to talk. He stepped aside. The house smelled like coffee and cedar, the same scent it always had. She laid the letter on the counter. I found this. Behind the painting. He read in silence, jaw tightening, eyes softening. When he finished, he looked at her like he didn't know whether to speak or apologize. I didn't mean to take so much, he said quietly. Back then I just wanted to win. I thought keeping the house meant I hadn't failed. Claire's voice trembled. You didn't just take things, Ethan. You took space. You took quiet. And I let you. He nodded slowly. I know. For a while they just stood there, the old house holding its breath around them. She looked at him, really looked at him. The man she'd loved, lost, and maybe still cared for in some unexplainable way. Why did you keep the painting at all? She asked. He hesitated. Because it reminded me of her, of you. It was the only thing that still felt alive. Claire swallowed hard. She forgave you, you know? His eyes glistened. I don't deserve that. None of us do, she said. But she gave it anyway. They sat at the kitchen table, the same one where they used to plan bills and birthdays. The silence between them wasn't angry now. It was heavy with the weight of understanding. Claire unfolded another corner of the letter and noticed faint ink smudges. An address written on the back. It was a small town outside Columbus. Underneath, her mom had scribbled, Where it began. Ethan leaned closer. You think she wanted us to go there? Claire shrugged. Maybe. Maybe there's more we're supposed to find. He hesitated. I'll drive. The road stretched flat and quiet. Fields rolled past, winter bare and endless. They didn't talk much. Just soft music on the radio, the sound of tires on wet asphalt. Somewhere between miles, the tension began to lift. Claire looked out the window. Do you ever think about who we were before all this? All the time, Ethan said. But I think who we are now matters more. She smiled faintly. Maybe that's the first thing we've agreed on in years. He chuckled. Guess so. They reached the address around noon. It was a small white farmhouse on the edge of a gravel road. Long abandoned but still standing. A faded for sale sign leaned against the porch. This was her childhood home, Claire whispered. She told me stories about chasing fireflies here. They stepped inside. Dust motes floated through broken light. The air smelled of wood and thyme. In the corner stood a rusted metal trunk. Claire knelt beside it and opened the lid. Inside were old sketchbooks, dried paint tubes, and a single framed photo. Her mom, younger, smiling beside a man holding a small child. That's you, Ethan said quietly. Claire smiled through tears. Yeah, I'd forgotten this picture. Underneath the photo lay another letter, this one addressed to both of them. To Claire and Ethan, if life ever takes more than you think you can bear, remember that what you create together matters more than what you lose apart. Claire closed her eyes. The tears came easy now, not from pain but release. Ethan touched the frame gently. She was trying to save us before we even knew we'd need saving. Maybe she still is, Claire said softly. Sometimes the hardest forgiveness is the one you never get to say out loud. If you've ever carried a letter like that in your heart, subscribe not for the story, but for the reminder that healing is possible. They sat on the porch steps as the clouds began to clear. For the first time in years, the air between them felt light. Ethan looked out at the empty field. What do you think she meant? What you create together? Claire thought for a moment. Maybe not marriage. Maybe something bigger. Kindness. Or understanding. He nodded. Then maybe we're not done yet. She smiled. Maybe not. Back in the car, Claire placed both letters on the dashboard. The sun broke through the clouds, scattering light across the windshield. For the first time, she didn't feel like a woman who'd lost everything. She felt like someone who'd found something new, something gentler. She glanced at Ethan. We should bring the paintings here. Hang them inside. Let them be home again. He smiled. Yeah, I'd like that. That evening, as they drove back toward Ridgeview, silence filled the car again. But it wasn't the same silence as before. It was peaceful, like two people finally breathing in sync after years of holding their breath. When they reached her apartment, Claire thanked him and started toward her door. Ethan stopped her. Claire. She turned. He looked at her, unsure, honest. If you ever want me to help finish what she started, I'll be there. She nodded, eyes soft. Maybe someday. He smiled. I'll wait. She closed the door gently behind her. Inside, she set the letters on the table beside the joined paintings. She lit a small candle, the flame flickering against the canvas. For the first time in years, she whispered, "Thank you, Mom." She doesn't know it yet, but her mother's words will soon lead her to one more truth. A truth that will test every bit of peace she's found. And when Ethan's past resurfaces unexpectedly, the fragile calm between them will be pushed to its breaking point. Forgiveness had opened the door, but love, real, complicated love, was about to ask if she was brave enough to walk through it. Snow covered Ridgeview in early February. The town looked quiet, like someone had pressed pause. Claire's apartment smelled of coffee and paint. The two joined canvases hung on the wall, soft light glinting off their surface. For a few weeks, life had been calm. She taught her classes, met friends for diner breakfasts, even laughed again. Ethan kept his word. He didn't push, didn't call too often, but sometimes he'd text a photo of a sunrise or a half-finished house project. They were learning what peace looked like, until the letter arrived. It came in a thin brown envelope, no return address, just her name written in block letters. Inside was a single page. Ethan Monroe is being investigated for misusing client funds on the Ridgeview project. You deserve to know the truth. Claire stared at it for a long minute. Her stomach dropped. She drove to his house that evening, wind cutting through the quiet streets. When he opened the door, he saw the paper in her hand and froze. Tell me this isn't true, she said. He rubbed a hand over his face. It's not what it sounds like. Then explain. He motioned her inside. The house felt colder than usual. The fire out, tools scattered on the counter. I took money from one account to cover another job, he said. It was a timing issue, not theft. My accountant caught it. Everything's fixed now. But someone thought it was serious enough to send me this. I don't know who, he said quietly. Maybe an old client. Maybe someone still angry about the divorce. She looked at him, heart pounding. You should have told me. I didn't want you to think I hadn't changed. But hiding it makes me think exactly that. The air between them thickened. Old wounds started whispering again, the ones they thought they'd buried under forgiveness. Claire stepped back. I can't go through lies again, Ethan. Not after all this. It's not a lie, he said. It's a mistake. I'm trying to fix it. She shook her head. Trying doesn't make it right. He opened his mouth to answer, but she was already gone, the door closing softly behind her. That night, Claire sat on her couch, staring at the two paintings. The candlelight flickered over the reaching hands. She thought about her mother's words, what you finish, you free. Maybe this was the part she still needed to finish. Learning that forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. Her phone buzzed. A message from Ethan. I'll prove it to you. Just give me time. She didn't reply. 2 days later, she got a call from the local paper. They wanted a comment. Apparently, someone had filed a complaint against Ethan's company. Her heart sank. At school, she tried to stay focused, helping Lily hang final projects for a winter display. But even the kids noticed her distraction. You okay? Miss Monroe? Lily asked. Claire smiled weakly. Just a long week. After class, she sat alone in the empty art room, the smell of paint and glue thick in the air. She pulled out her mother's letters again, rereading the line. He took out of fear, not cruelty. Fear. Maybe that's what this was too. She whispered to the empty room. Mom, what am I supposed to do now? That evening, a knock came at her door. Ethan stood outside, holding a folder. I have proof, he said, voice rough. She hesitated, then let him in. He spread the papers on her table, bank statements, signed letters from the accountant, cleared balances. It's over, he said. The bank's confirmed everything's corrected. No charges, no case. She looked through the pages, scanning the lines she didn't fully understand but wanted to believe. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because I didn't want to bring chaos into what we were rebuilding. She set the folder down. That's not how rebuilding works, Ethan. You can't pick which truths are convenient. He looked at her, eyes tired. You're right. When we started talking again, it felt like maybe I had a chance to be better. I didn't want to ruin it. Tears burned behind her eyes. And you think hiding things saves it? I think I was scared. She nodded slowly. Then you still don't trust me. He reached for her hand, but she pulled back. Don't. The words hung in the air like smoke. Have you ever lost someone because you were too afraid to fight for the truth? Tell me in the comments. Ethan stood by the door, hands in his pockets. I'll go, he said quietly. But please know, I never stopped caring. She didn't answer. When the door closed, she leaned against the wall, breath shaking. The silence felt heavy again, the kind that presses on your ribs. She looked back at the paintings, still waiting, patient. And for the first time, she whispered, maybe love isn't about keeping someone. Maybe it's about letting them face what they've broken. She blew out the candle. The flame flickered, then died. Across town, Ethan sat alone in his truck outside the river bridge. Snow fell in lazy circles against the windshield. He thought about calling her, then set his phone aside. Some things couldn't be fixed with words. He started the engine, headlights cutting through the white haze. Back at the apartment, Claire stood at the window, watching snow collect on the streetlights. Her reflection in the glass looked steadier now, sad, but not shattered. She touched the edge of the nearest painting. Her mother's colors glowed faintly in the dim light. Fear, not cruelty, she whispered again. Then she turned off the lamp and let the dark fill the room. She doesn't know it yet, but Ethan's next decision will test the meaning of forgiveness she's fought so hard to learn. And the call she'll receive tomorrow morning will change how she sees him, and herself, forever. Sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes it's the beginning of goodbye. But every ending carries a quiet question. What if the heart still wants to try again? The next morning, Claire woke to her phone buzzing on the nightstand. IT was early, barely 6 a.m., and the world outside her window was still blue with dawn. She squinted at the screen. Unknown number. A text popped up. Ethan was in an accident. He's at Ridgeview General. Her heart skipped. She sat up fast, the blanket twisting around her. 100 thoughts rushed through. Anger, guilt, fear. But only one feeling stayed. She needed to see him. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and winter air. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead to the front desk. A tired nurse looked up. Ethan Monroe? Claire asked. Room 204. He's stable, the nurse said gently. You family? Claire hesitated. I was. When she stepped into the room, Ethan was sitting up in bed, one arm in a sling, a small cut above his eyebrow. He looked surprised but relieved. Hey, he said quietly. She let out a shaky breath. You scared me. He gave a half smile. Guess I'm running out of ways to do that. What happened? Black ice on the bridge. Truck spun out. He looked down at his hands. Maybe it's what I needed to stop running. She moved closer to the window. Snow fell outside in soft flakes. You could have been, she stopped. You could have been gone. He nodded. I know. And the last thing you would have remembered was another half-truth. Silence settled between them. Finally, he said, "I'm sorry, Claire. Not just for the money or the divorce. I'm sorry for being so afraid of losing control that I lost everything that mattered." She turned, eyes shining but steady. "And I'm sorry I kept waiting for you to fix things instead of facing them myself." Their voices were low, careful, like people walking through the wreckage of something precious. The nurse peeked in. "You folks need anything?" Ethan smiled faintly. "Just a few more minutes." When she left, the room went quiet again. "I used to think forgiveness meant pretending it didn't hurt," Claire said. "But now I think it means admitting it did, and loving anyway." He looked up, eyes wet. "Do you think we could ever start over?" She sighed. "I don't know, but maybe we can start honest." He nodded. Honest sounds like a good place. That afternoon, she drove him home. His truck sat at the shop, bent at the front bumper, snow caked on the tires. In the passenger seat of her car, he kept his eyes on the road. "You don't have to do this." "I know," she said, "but I want to." They passed the old diner, the post office, the frozen park. Ridgeview looked the same, but something inside them had shifted. At his house, she helped him inside, careful with his arm. The fire crackled softly. He gestured toward the wall. "I hung the painting again." She looked. It was the two hands, hers and her mother's, reaching still. He said quietly, "I keep thinking about what she wrote. What you create together matters more than what you lose apart. Maybe that's the truth I never understood." Claire smiled faintly. "It's not too late to understand it." He looked at her like he wanted to believe that. That night, back in her apartment, Claire sat by the window with a sketchpad. She drew. Not the hands this time, but two hearts held by thread, connected, not merged. Separate, but still linked. She titled it The Reckoning. Underneath, she wrote, "We choose what the thread becomes." The next morning, she visited the art gallery downtown. The curator, a friendly woman named Janice, looked at the painting. "This is powerful," Janice said. "Is it for sale?" Claire hesitated. "Not yet. It's still teaching me something." Meanwhile, Ethan stood at the river bridge where he'd lost control of the truck. The snow had melted now, leaving slick patches of ice along the railing. He stared at the water, thinking about second chances and the things you can't buy back. He took out his phone and typed a message, then deleted it. He wasn't sure if she needed words right now or space. Instead, he pulled out a small wooden charm from his pocket. The one Claire had carved for him years ago. It had cracked down the middle during the crash, but he kept both halves. He tossed one half into the river and whispered, "For the man I used to be." He pocketed the other, "For who I want to become." Days passed quietly. Claire kept painting. Ethan kept fixing the old houses he loved. Neither called, but both felt the same small pull, like gravity. One afternoon, she walked downtown and saw him through the cafe window. He was laughing with a friend, light catching in his eyes in a way she hadn't seen in years. For the first time, she didn't feel pain, just peace. She smiled and walked on. That night, back at home, she received a message. "I finished the house on Main. It's open if you want to see it." She typed back, "Maybe tomorrow," then paused and added, "I'm proud of you." No hearts, no promises, just truth. She turned off her phone and stepped outside. The night air was cold, stars faint above the streetlights. She wrapped her coat tighter and walked toward the park. Snow squeaked under her boots. The world was quiet, just wind, breath, and the sound of her steps. For the first time since the divorce, she didn't feel like half of anything. She was whole, even in her solitude. Tomorrow, when she walks into that house on Main, she'll discover something Ethan built just for her. Something that will rewrite how their story ends. And with it, the question that started it all will finally be answered. What did he really take in the divorce? Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's choosing love anyway. And for both of them, the next sunrise will ask for that choice one last time. The next morning broke soft and bright. A thin layer of frost glazed the windows, and the world outside shimmered like glass. Claire bundled herself in a scarf and gloves, grabbed her sketchpad, and drove toward Main Street. The house Ethan had mentioned stood at the end of the block, newly painted white with pale blue shutters. A small for sale sign leaned against the porch rail, half buried in snow. She hesitated before walking up the steps. The porch boards creaked under her boots, but the sound was comforting, old, familiar. Inside, the place smelled faintly of cedar and fresh paint. Morning light spilled through the windows in long golden strips. She walked through each room slowly. The walls were lined with gentle colors, soft grays, faded blues, warm whites. In the living room, above the fireplace, hung something that stopped her in her tracks. It was her painting, the two joined canvases. But this time there was a third. Between the reaching hands, Ethan had painted a small golden thread connecting them. Below it, a note in his handwriting. For what we created together. Claire stood there, silent, tears blurring her vision. He hadn't called or written. He'd simply finished what they'd both started. A soft sound behind her made her turn. Ethan stood in the doorway, snow still dusting his jacket. "I thought you might come," he said quietly. She wiped her eyes. "You finished it." He nodded. "Yeah, felt right. I wanted to show that what we built still exists, even if it looks different now." Claire looked up at the golden thread. "It's beautiful." He smiled. "You made the first half. I just followed your lines." She stepped closer. "You didn't have to do this." "I did," he said, "because I finally understand what I took in the divorce." She looked at him, waiting. "I didn't take the house or the money or the furniture," he said softly. "I took the chance to make things right. I took the time I should have spent loving better. And that's what I've been trying to give back ever since." The words hit deep. Honest. Simple. True. Tears welled again, but this time they felt clean, like rain after a long storm. She walked closer to the painting. The golden thread glowed in the light. "I used to think forgiveness was the end," she said. "But I think it's the beginning." Ethan nodded. "So do I." They stood side by side, not touching, just being. Two people who had finally run out of anger and found grace instead. Outside, snowflakes drifted past the windows, quiet and slow. If you've ever learned that love doesn't have to look the way you imagine to still be real, subscribe, not for me, but for every heart that's still trying. Later, they sat on the porch steps, sipping coffee from mismatched mugs. The sun melted the frost from the railings, drops of water sliding down like clear pearls. Ethan said, "I'm selling this place, but I wanted you to see it before I let it go." Claire smiled. "It's a good house. Feels like peace." "That's what I hoped for," he said. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the kind that only comes after the hardest conversations. Then he turned to her. "You ever think about what's next?" She looked out toward the empty street. "I think about living honest, painting more, maybe starting classes again in the spring." He nodded. "That sounds right." She glanced at him. "What about you?" He shrugged. "Keep building, but maybe a little slower this time." She smiled. "Slower's good." Before she left, Ethan walked her to her CA art as she opened the door. He said softly, "I'm glad you came today." "Me too." He hesitated. "Claire, I'm not asking for another chance. I just—" She stopped him with a small smile. "You already have one, just not the same kind." He understood. It wasn't romance. It was forgiveness finally alive. That evening, Claire hung a new painting in her apartment. A small one of a single golden thread stretching across a blank white canvas. Underneath, she wrote in careful letters, "He had no idea what he was really taking." She stepped back and smiled. For the first time, the sentence didn't feel bitter. Felt whole. Because now she knew what he had taken was never hers to lose. He had taken the chance to change. And he had used it. Weeks later, as spring thawed the last of the snow, Claire returned to her classroom. The art room smelled of chalk and sunlight. The students chattered as they unpacked brushes and paper. Lily ran up, holding a small painting. "Miss Monroe, look, I finished it." Claire smiled. "It's beautiful. What's it called?" Lily grinned. "Together." My mom helped me with the colors. Claire's eyes softened. It's perfect. She hung it on the classroom wall right beside her own piece, the golden thread. That afternoon, she drove past the house on Main one last time. A new family was moving in. 2 kids running across the yard. A dog chasing behind. Claire smiled as she passed. Life was filling the house again, just as it should. That night, her phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. The new owners loved your painting. They asked if they could keep it. She smiled and typed back. Good. It belongs there. How are you? He asked. Good, she wrote. Really good. He replied with a single word. Same. She looked at the message for a long time, then set the phone aside and opened her window. Warm air drifted in, carrying the smell of spring rain and cut grass. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel the weight of the past pressing down. Just the quiet hum of something new beginning. Claire stood at the window, listening to the rain. The lights from passing cars shimmered against the glass. She touched the golden thread, painting with gentle fingers. Her mother's words echoed softly. Love doesn't die. It changes shape. And in that moment, she understood. This was what healing looked like, not forgetting but remembering without pain. A heart that had been broken, now open again. Do you believe some people are worth the wait? Drop a heart in the comments if this story hit you. He took everything in the divorce. But in losing it all, they both found the one thing worth keeping. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.